Okay. Anyway, you ready for this? Good morning. We're live. Happy Friday. It's April 3rd, 2020. Dead smack in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. We are in our post-apocalyptic Zoom phase. And today we're talking about how to improve our accounts payable workflow. And for those of you who missed it, yesterday I was actually on CPA Academy giving another webinar on tools for working remotely. And in that webinar, I was talking a lot, as I have been whenever I get onto this subject, about the fact that I think in many cases we jump the gun when it comes to apps and tools and things. And what we do is we go straight to the app because we hear people talking about, oh, you got to try this app, you got to try that app, you got to try ClickUp, you got to do Asana, you got to do Smartsheet, and you hear all these apps and you think, oh my God, I got to jump on the app. But in between that, in between hearing about it and jumping on the app, what we've forgotten to do is actually analyze what problem we're going to attempt to solve with that app. So the apps are designed to solve problems. But if we go to the app without identifying what problem we're trying to solve, then you're sort of putting the cart before the horse, so to speak. And I think that's the problem that a lot of us encounter, and why we end up getting frustrated and overwhelmed. And we start using an app, and then we start realizing this app isn't working for me because, again, we it's not even that we lost sight. We never had sight of what problem we're trying to solve with the apps that we're using. So I think the first thing that we always have to do when we're looking at apps is we have to answer one very important question that's kind of broken up into two parts. Does this app either solve a problem I don't already have solved, or does it solve one better, right? It has to meet one of those two criteria in order for us to even spend the time getting into an app and using it. If we've already got our AP workflow nailed down, then there's nothing that needs any solving, and we don't need any apps, or we don't need any apps different than what we may already be using. The only question then is, can we look at an app that might solve the AP workflow problem better than the solution we currently have? And that brings me up to a quote that I read on Forbes this week from Jeff Bezos. Hopefully you all know, you haven't been living under a rock, Jeff Bezos is the CEO of Amazon, one of the richest men in the world. And the quote says as follows. It says, "We didn't ascend from our hunter-gatherer days by being satisfied. People have a voracious appetite for a better way." And I love that quote because I really think it underscores everything that we're all about here. Those of us who are in the accounting profession and who like to sort of sit at the forefront of technology and what's the latest and greatest apps that are out there. If you're like me, then these things become like toys to play with, because then I like to see, does it solve a problem or solve one better than what I've already got? In fact, just this morning, as I was working on some other things, I got the second or third email from a company about an app that's designed to look and function a lot like, and actually they're pretty much going out there head to head and saying we're going to be a replacement for Microsoft's Wunderlist, right? And it's called Zen something or other. I bookmarked it this morning so I could take a closer look at it later. It's called ZenKit. And it does have a lot of the look and feel of Wunderlist. If you remember, Wunderlist was originally its own company designed by a bunch of German app developers. And it was a very good and simple to-do list app. And it still is. But I took a look at the ZenKit just for 5 minutes. I was like, let me just dig in here because it's the second or third email, and it piqued my curiosity enough. And I clicked over, and not only does it look and feel a whole lot like Wunderlist, but the experience is much smoother. With Wunderlist, one of the things I never liked about it was it always felt clunky when I'm clicking around on things. It's like I'm not sure if I actually clicked on something. It seems to take a second before it reacts, and this ZenKit tool seems to have fixed all that and done a very nice job of it. So there's an example of something that if I'm looking for a simple to-do list application, and maybe I've been using Wunderlist and I've been happy with it, well, taking a look at the little bit that I did of this ZenKit so far, what I might say is that it seems like it might solve the problem better than Wunderlist did, which would be a good use case for trying it. Maybe trying a few projects in it, seeing how it goes. The acid test is always going to be actually putting it into practical use with a real live application, right? So today I want to discuss how we can improve our workflows, especially around accounts payable. And before we discuss any applications, here's what I want to do over the next 45 minutes. I want to identify the actual accounts payable workflow. Let's identify every step. I want to dig deep into the minutia of where it starts, what happens in between, and when it ends, right? So we'll have time at the end for questions. So, make a note of them. And they'll likely be answered before we get to the end. But again, I want to start with discussing what does the actual accounts payable workflow or process look like? Where does it start, right? What's the first thing that happens? Well, there's probably a couple different ways the process gets started. One way is I get a bill, right? Somebody sends me a bill. I get a bill from my utility company. I get a bill from anywhere, right? That's one way, is I get a bill, and let's go back a few years. The first thing I'd probably think of doing is entering that bill into QuickBooks, right? Because now I've got a bill, I've got to pay it. It's got a due date, let's say within 30 days from now. So I want to get it into the system so that I can review my accounts payable report and decide when it needs to get paid, right? And that was the classic workflow. If you think back to the days when things were mostly paper and not as much computer, or not computer at all, that bill would come into a physical inbox. We would have those trays on our desk. Some people still have them, but so a piece of paper would land on that tray, and that would be my inbox, right? And then at some point when I'm getting ready to enter on my bills, I'd take the piece of paper off the tray, I'd enter it into QuickBooks, right? And then I put the piece of paper back into another tray that's for things that have been entered, right? And then I do that with all the rest of the bills. So everything moves from the inbox to entered. While I'm doing that, of course, somebody comes over and drops a few more in there, right? And so it's a revolving tray kind of thing. So once I've got them all entered, now I'm good, and I can wait maybe later today, maybe another day or two from now, maybe this Friday, I'm going to run a report that shows all of the bills that I need to pay, and I'm going to review them. I remember when I was the business manager for a marketing company years ago, I would review them every Friday. I would print out the unpaid bills report and sit down with the CEO of the company, and she would go over and check off on the piece of paper which bills she wanted me to pay. And then I would take that piece of paper with the check marks and her hand scribbled notes that I could barely read, and take them back over to the computer and sit there and check things off. And then when I got to the hand scribbled notes, I'd usually have to go back to her and ask her some questions for clarification, right? You all get it. But what I'm trying to do is illustrate really what the whole process looks like, the whole workflow of managing accounts payable from the moment we get that bill to the moment we actually pay the bill, right? Now, the other example of an AP workflow is I swipe a debit card or a credit card, which means I'm actually in the same moment that I'm getting the bill, I'm paying for it, such as when I go into a store to pay for something, right? In other words, I don't really get a bill. I swipe my card, it's paid for, and now I've got a receipt, right? And then I want that receipt documented. I want to make sure it gets booked into the right place in QuickBooks. If it's, a meal with a client, traditionally we've been told we write the name of the client and what the subject of discussion was on that receipt, right? We need to have that documented, because in the worst case scenario, if I get audited by the IRS, I need to be able to pull up that document, and I need to be able to tell the auditor that this was a legitimate meal, that was a business expense, that I had a discussion with a client who I took out to that meal, that I paid for that meal with my payment method and not anybody else's, and that, again, I need to be able to document what was discussed. And if if it got real extreme, and if need be, the auditor could go question that client of mine, who would then confirm, yeah, we had that meal and we had that discussion, bottom line. So, I often think of the audit trail when I think of these things, probably largely because of my background as an auditor. That's where I come from. That's how I think. And I think if I needed to prove this to an auditor, what needs to be in place in order for me to do that, right? So now we fast forward this process to today's technology. And what happens? I get a bill or I make a charge. It's one of those two ways that we kind of start the cycle in this process, right? And then we have our applications out there now. And of course, we're going to look at one today with my friend Dan here. But generally speaking, we either need or have or want a process for taking that data. I no longer want to have to sit there entering anything. And with the technology we have, there's absolutely no reason under the sun why I ever should. If you're ever entering a bill in this day and age, then you definitely need to look around at some of the technology that's out there. There's no reason I should ever manually be entering a bill today. It should be only a very rare and extreme exception when I do. Just my opinion, my experience that I'm sharing with you, right? So the question is then, if I'm entering something, right, or not entering something, if I'm getting data based on a transaction that I've had, based on an expense that either has to be paid or now has been paid, what's my workflow, right? Where does that document go? I want that document stored in archives somewhere, so that, and a lot of you hear me say this phrase frequently, I feel like I've been saying it constantly lately because it definitely comes up under the heading of, tools for working remotely, is I need a process for, documentation that basically conforms to the following. It needs to be organized, categorized, and easily referenced, right? Organized, I need to know where to put it. Categorized, I need to have it categorized when I put it wherever I know where to put it. And then most importantly, easily referenced means 6 months from now, when I have no independent recollection of what it was or where I put it, I should be able to find it in 30 seconds or less. Those are kind of my rules for documentation on any workflow, certainly with respect to an accounts payable kind of workflow, right? What are the processes do we think about that we need to have in place? I might need some kind of an approval process. I remember when I worked for the government as an auditor, and we would submit expense reports for when we would go out onto the field to do our audits. We would have, there were rules. Anything under $25 for a single meal, we didn't have to provide a receipt for. If it was more than $25 for a meal, then we had to provide the receipt, and it needed, you know, and so there was kind of an approval there. At least they needed to see the document if it was going to be more than $25. So we have an approval process. In other contexts, you might have a company where they're fine paying anything under, you know, $25 or $50 or $100, but at some point there's going to be a threshold where before something is paid, somebody else needs to take a look at it, right? And again, from an audit standpoint, what we're doing there is we're implementing a system of internal controls. We want to make sure that nobody can abuse our system. We want to make sure, frankly, that nobody can steal money from us. Right? And when we're talking about the accounts payable workflow and stealing money from us, what it means is we don't want somebody sneaking in some personal expense that we end up reimbursing them for when we really shouldn't be paying for the thing, right? So these are the kinds of things that I always want to encourage people to think about in terms of what are our systems. More importantly, because most, if not all of us here today are accountants and bookkeepers, we want to be thinking about our client systems and how do we protect our clients, right? That's our job, really. You know, we think of bookkeeping and accounting, and we think of all the different things that we do in workflows, and we think of all these different things that we would use to describe as what our job or function is, when in reality and in the much bigger picture, I think our jobs can be summed up very succinctly as it is our job to protect our clients, plain and simple. It's our job to make them feel safe, and it's our job to make them be safe from, you know, any abuses, any fraud, any stealing, any theft. That's really our job, is to protect our clients. So in the AP workflow, this is a critical area in which we need to enforce protections and make sure that our clients can't be taken advantage of in any way, shape, or form. So we need these processes. We need to know that over a certain amount, something needs an approval, and we need to know what is that process? How does it get approved? And that has to be balanced with paying things timely, right? Because if I can have a really cool approval workflow process, but if somehow that process is too clunky and now I'm paying bills late, now my client's getting hit with late fees and maybe interest, and that's not protecting the client. One of the things we need to protect clients from is paying more than they ever should, right? They should never have to pay interest or late fees unless it's just that their cash flow wasn't sufficient to prevent that from happening, right? And I have those kind of rules in place with some of my clients. I have clients where the initial rule is, you know, they just tell me straight off, I have plenty of cash flow. I don't ever want to see a late fee, and I don't ever want to see any interest charged on anything. And I say, great, there's an easy way to solve that, especially when you tell me that there's enough cash flow to pay things, which is that we go through every single payment that we have to make every month, and we put everything on auto pay, right? Simple. Pay it as soon as it's due. For credit cards, I'll put auto pay for at least the minimum payment, because sometimes I want to analyze it, you know, make sure the minimum payment gets paid so that there's no late fees. But then I want to analyze it to see, do we have the cash flow? But again, if they told me that they don't want to ever see any interest charges, then it's simple. We need to pay the balance off in full by the due date. That's the only way for sure we can avoid any interest charges, right? So these are the things we really want to think about when it comes to the workflows. So do we have approvals, right? Are the approvals enforced? Meaning, and that goes back to the balance between whether or not somebody can make sure something gets paid timely. Sometimes it's better to get it paid timely and then go back and review it later if we need to, but this way we've at least avoided late fees or interest, right? So we want to have an approval process, but we also don't want to tie the person who's paying the bills hands up so tightly that they can't act when they need to get a bill paid if they absolutely have to. They can always pay it and then go back and review it. And if the business owner says, oh, we shouldn't have paid that bill, then we can figure out how to address that, or we shouldn't have paid as much of that bill, right? And sometimes it's going to be, well, too late now, but then let's build a more detailed process around getting the approvals done more timely so that we don't run into this sticky situation trying to balance. Bless you. Nice catch. So that we don't run into this issue of balancing between getting things paid on time and at the same time getting the approval done properly. right? So there's a case to be made for why we want to have an approval process, but we don't want it too tightly wound. We want to give somebody the freedom that they'll need if they need to just get something paid, and then we can analyze it later, at least in the minimum amount, right? What else? So we've got the approvals, and that's, I think, a key part of this, right? That a lot of us get hung up on, frankly, is especially if your client is counting on you to pay the bills, then how do you make sure that you've documented that your client says it's okay to pay the bills? Because that's the other side of this, is you don't want the client ever coming back to you and saying, why did you pay these bills? You bankrupted me, and and now I'm going out of business, and it's all your fault because you paid bills you weren't supposed to pay. Meanwhile, you're like, you told me to pay the bills. I paid the bills. I wanted to make sure nothing was late. And of course, we have to use our brains and analyze their cash flow and not pay bills that they don't have the cash flow to cover. That's all common sense, and I think it should go without saying. At the same time, I think it's worth saying. So bottom line, we need systems in place, and those systems need to be sort of packaged in an ecosystem that provides the right balance between being able to get things done and having the right workflow in place. So with that, what I want to do is I want to introduce, many of you know him already, I want to introduce my good friend Dan from Billbeez. Billbeez, you've all heard me talking about. It makes me very happy and proud when I hear people, or see people reaching out to me, and they mention Billbeez almost what's it called, without me having to mention it. They mention it to me first because it tells me that that we've done our job getting the word out about Billbeez. Obviously, I love this app. I love the guys from Billbeez, Dan and Chen. Many of you have met them at QuickBooks Connect, and I believe that Billbeez is a great solution for addressing everything that I've just laid out for you in terms of designing the workflow and having an approval process and having the right balance in place. And most importantly, and I say this a lot about all different kinds of apps and all different kinds of areas, it's not just the app itself. It's, of course, the team behind the app. That's equally important, maybe more important than the app itself. Okay, and then the last thing is, and a lot of us have been talking about ClickUp in this context, and I think the same can be said very definitely about Billbeez. One of the reasons we love ClickUp as a project management tool is they're constantly innovating and developing. They're constantly rolling out new features and making the product better. So with Billbeez, I think the same can be said very safely and fairly, that these guys are constantly updating the product. At a certain point, I said to these guys, I said, I would love to see Billbeez be able to automatically code transactions so that I don't have to code them myself. And Dan said, wait, it's coming. And of course, there's other apps out there that you can set up to do it. But what I love about Billbeez is these guys don't want to do what the other apps are doing. They want to do it smarter. And now they've got it, and it's smarter. Because with Billbeez, I don't have to go in at any point and say, if the payment is to Staples, book it to office supplies. Billbeez actually has AI built in, intelligence built in, where it can analyze the history. So if you've coded something somewhere ever before, Billbeez will now figure out exactly where to code it, and it will code it for you. There's zero setup required. And that's what I love about these guys in this product. It's smart. So they may take a little longer to roll out certain features, but it's because when they do, it's 10 times as smart as what's already out there. With that, I'm going to shut up, Dan, and I'm going to let you kind of take over. And of course, I'd like to have the discussion. I'd like you to show people Billbeez. What I haven't even mentioned is the bill pay side, which is really where we want to focus today. So Dan, take it away. It's all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. Pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure to be here. Hi, everyone. And by the way, you already did all the demo. I don't have anything to do. I think we're almost done.
See you next week.
Because everything you just mentioned is exactly what we're trying to do, improving workflows. We're going to talk today about specifically maybe on the AP, but of course we are improving more workflows like data extraction and of course the bill payment. And we're adding more and more all the time. So just that I know how much time do I have, because I have a lot of things I wanted to show.
You have about 3 hours. Yeah.
That's great. That's usually what I do in a demo, like okay, 2.5 hours. So
no, you have the rest of the hour. 25? So, yeah, about 30-35 minutes, and then we'll wrap up.
Perfect. So,
go, right? What's that, Matthew?
We have anywhere else to go, right?
Definitely like a week. I have like a week.
Well, except to go fill out loan applications.
So again, thank you, Seth. So hi everyone, Dan from Billbeez. I'm not sure if everyone knows, but Billbeez was founded by bookkeepers and accountants. I'm a CPA. I have my own practice for small businesses doing bookkeeping and accounting. And it actually came from that, from our pain to trying to improve the way we work with our clients. We work today with so many different apps, like if it's data extraction, paying bills, and expense reimbursement, and so on. And in the end, we found out that most of these apps are robust and are too robust for the small business owner. And in the end, most of ourselves, bookkeepers and accountants, work with small business owners. So we don't really need this robust product, and which of course afterwards they're also pricey. So and we charge usually about a flat fee our clients, and a lot of the times we actually suffer for all these apps. So we took in Billbeez and consolidated all the ongoing workflows of operating the business and took it to one API, one sync to QuickBooks. You don't need to find the right workflow to work with your clients. You know, for example, if you're using, I don't know, Receipt Bank and Bill.com for paying your bills. So today you need first your client to send the bills to Receipt, and then it was to sync to QuickBooks, and then you need to make sure it goes to Bill.com, and then all the others, and a lot of friction along the way. So we actually, with Billbeez, you don't have that, because each one of our products has one API and one sync to QuickBooks Online. So you never have this friction of the data and be worried that something didn't went well. So today we have two products. One is the financial dashboard that we started with, which is actually a product for the business owner, for the client, where they can see and manage all their expenses and revenues in one place. We pull the information from QuickBooks and push, so they can see everything in Billbeez, and you can keep going working with QuickBooks Online, and you don't need them to be in your QuickBooks, because of course you don't want them to mess your books. On the other hand, most of the times the client doesn't want to go to QuickBooks because they don't understand how to work with it, and they get frustrated. So with the financial dashboard, it's a great way for you to offer to your clients a way to see everything you're doing in QuickBooks. So this is the first product. And then of course we have the other product, which is the AP payment, which is a dashboard for you as the financial advisors who work with your clients to manage all your clients in one place. And you can see each one when they need to pay. We remind you, you can see whoever approved the bills, and we want to avoid, like Seth said, late fees, and help you manage everything from one place. So if it's okay, Seth, I'll just dive in, because perfect. So let me share my screen. So this is the dashboard for you as accountant or bookkeeper. So how does it work? Once you add a client to Billbeez, they get a unique email, for example, seth@mybillbeez.com. All they need to do is to send the bills and receipts to this address. We'll extract the information and push it to QuickBooks. Now, why do I say bills and receipts? Because like I said, we have both the financial dashboard and the bill pay. So if it's a receipt, it goes to the financial dashboard. And if it's a bill, it comes here. By the way, also the bills go to the financial dashboard where the client can see everything. But here, of course, you can see only the bill that you need to pay. Now, afterwards, you connect the QuickBooks account, and we pull also all the information from QuickBooks. So here you can see bills that were sent through Billbeez and pushed to QuickBooks, and bills that we pulled from QuickBooks. Once you send it to Billbeez, it comes here to in process. It takes, like Seth said, up to 24 hours until we extract the information from the bill. We wanted it to be like most accurate as possible. A lot of apps do it quicker, but in the end, you find yourself with a missing detail that you need to add more details, and sometimes they pull the wrong details. In the end, you need to go ahead and match it and find out if it's correct. And with Billbeez, it's more than 99% accuracy. After the data is extracted, we push the bill to QuickBooks. And then you can go ahead and pay. You will see your own practice here and all your clients down here. Now, if you want to add a client, you just press here and add all the bank information and everything about the client, and it's verified for payment. Now, let's say you want to go ahead and pay. You just press what you want to pay. Now you can see all the bills to be paid. If you see the document, it means it was sent through Billbeez and pushed to QuickBooks. If it's without the document, it means we only pulled it from QuickBooks. Now, let's say you want to go ahead and pay these 3 bills. And then you say, okay, I want to see if I already paid to this vendor previously. So you can press here and you can see the vendor page in our financial dashboard. So it helps you. Instead, you don't need to go to QuickBooks. You can see everything because we pulled it from QuickBooks. So you can see all the transactions for the same vendor. You can see also the details inside and you see which one you already paid. Now, let's say again, you want to go ahead and approve these bills. You go here for ask for approval. By the way, you can also drag and drop the bill here. Approve the bill. So you have two options. One, you can send it to email and your clients will have get an email which will look like that saying, hi, John wanted to approve these bills. And the client can actually see the bills from the email itself. So of course, it's very important for him to see what he needs to approve. Now, let's say he wants to approve only some of them and not all of them. He can press approve some. And as you can see, it opens in a new browser, which you don't really need to enter and log into Billbeez. Now, this is a big deal for the business owner and for your clients because today they don't want to sign up to new apps and they don't want to remember new passwords and they just want to do it easy. So with Billbeez, they can just press it. It opens in a browser. They can decide which bills they want to approve, and that's it. Another way to do it, it's with a shareable link. Why? Because we understand that a lot of times we're sending so many emails to our clients, but in the end, they don't respond. So we thought about doing a shareable link, which you can share with your clients. You can text message, you can Slack, and they get the same link as I showed you, where they can see everything and approve the bill. Once you're sending it for the client, it will change for pending approval. And once it's approved, it will change for approved. Now, at the same time, you will also get a notification here. You can see you have all the notifications for your clients. Like I said, we want to help you manage all your clients in one place. So if someone approves a bill, you can go here and see which bills were approved for payment very easily and for which client. And then, of course, you can go ahead and pay. Let me get back to the payments. Now, one thing which is important, we didn't want to make the approval as a blocker. Why? Because a lot of times you send to a client to approve bills, but in the end they respond like with an email or a text message approved, and we didn't want to make it a blocker for you to go ahead and pay the bill. Now, let's say you want to go ahead and pay some bills. After, of course, you get the approval, you go to proceed to pay. Now, the first time you will need to choose which payment method you want to use for this vendor. If it's already green, it means you already verified it before. Now, let's say you want to go ahead and choose a payment method. So today we have few payment methods. First is e-check. All you need to do is put the vendor's email. The vendor will get a nice email like that with a copy of the check. They have two options. One, they can press here and print the check on a regular A4 and go to the bank with it and deposit it. Or they can just put their bank information and accounting router and we'll send a regular ACH. This is for e-check. Physical check, you just need to put the information of the address of the vendor and we'll send a physical check on your client's behalf. It will look like that with the client's name and so on. And it will take, it sends with a regular USPS in the States. Another method is the ACH. Again, very easy. You just put the vendor's information. The vendor gets an email saying, hi, please put the bank information and we'll do a regular ACH. Now, once the vendor is verified for ACH, they are also verified for same-day ACH. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the same-day ACH. It's actually like a wire. So, for example, if you want to pay someone very urgently because, for example, you forgot to pay them or you want to pay it for some reason quicker, so you can do a same-day ACH, meaning that if you send it until noon the same day, it will reach the vendor until the end of the next day. Now, a same-day ACH costs in Billbeez $5 per transaction, which, of course, as you know, a wire in the bank or any other app that's doing a same-day ACH, it's much higher. Another option is, of course, international payments. Now, we're working today with our partner Payoneer. So all you need to do is put the vendor's email. They get an email asking them to sign up, and they will get international payment. And like you saw, we're actually wanted to provide a holistic place to pay all your vendors in one place for most of the payment methods. So you don't need to use for a different payment vendor for a vendor, for example, to go to the bank or any other app. We wanted you to have all of that or most of it in one place. Once you decided and verified the payment method for all your vendors, you can go ahead and pay. Once you press pay, we will automatically, immediately push a bill payment in QuickBooks against the bill. Now, I guess most of you are familiar with the clearing account in QuickBooks once you make a payment. Now, like Seth mentioned before, we're trying to make it easier and smarter. So in Billbeez, we don't do a clearing account. Once you add the bank account in Billbeez, we ask you which target account it's in QuickBooks. So once you make the payment, we will close the bill payment on the amount of the bill against the specific bank account. So in the bank feed, you will see exactly the same amount, and it will be easy to reconcile in QuickBooks. Now, if, for example, for a specific vendor has few bills, we will close one bill payment for all his specific bills, and the same, you will see a different amount in the bank feed, which will close automatically, which of course, it avoids another step that you need to do, which is going to the clearing account and then start clearing it, or going to the bank and seeing one amount for a lot of vendors, and you don't really remember which vendor you paid in this batch payment. That's pretty much it for our bill pay.
Dan,
we
have a couple of questions in the chat
that
I think it's a good time to answer. So
Perfect.
The first question, and I want to confirm that I answered correctly, is Billbeez works in any country, or just about any country. Namely, the person asking is Dominique. She wants to make sure it works in Canada.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we have the financial dashboard, which works everywhere in the world, but the bill pay, it's only in the US, of course. Physical checks and the payments, it's only in the US.
Okay.
Sorry about that. We know that we've been approached for a lot of people from Canada, and we are working also to add specifically the payment there also.
Okay, and to clarify one other thing on that, if you're in the U.S. using bill pay, you can make international payments. Billbeez uses Payoneer to process those, but you just can't be in another country as of now and use the bill pay to pay bills.
That's right, because you can't add the bank account to Billbeez.
Okay, and Dan,
I didn't show that in the beginning. Yeah, sorry, I didn't show that in the beginning, but of course, once you sign up, you add the bank account, and of course, it needs to be a US-based bank account.
Okay, and then is there any timeline that you can share in terms of how soon it might be available for Canada?
You know, I hate to promise. You know how it is.
Of course, yeah.
I'm an accountant. You know, it's not in my field. Always, I'm looking to bring more things into the product. But you know, in our roadmap, we're working also on other countries. But mostly, I want to say that we're working on adding more products, like integration with more products. Maybe desktop, definitely zero in the future. So I can't promise anything, but I guess it will be until the end of the year.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, no, I get it. You don't want to promise that it's going to be available and then it's not available and then people start lynching you.
You know, as an accountant, you are always conservative.
Of course.
That's us.
Okay, so I think that those are the main questions that we had in the chat I wanted to get to.
Perfect. So like I showed, this is actually the AP. It's a dashboard for you to manage all your clients' bill pays in one place without late fees. And as you saw, it's very easy to use. You don't need to teach your clients anything. They just get an email or a link in the text message saying, please approve these bills. And that's it. You get a notification. So I want also, if I have some time, and I think I have that, right? So I want to show also the dashboard, which is a different workflow, but I think it's also important for you working with your clients. Perfect. So this is the financial dashboard. This is what your clients actually see. Again, one API to QuickBooks. So anything you do here or in the bill pay, it's all affected in the same way. But here in the dashboard, you actually see everything, receipts, bills, everything. Like I said, we push today only bills. Why? Because we decided that, for example, if you work in QuickBooks and you're working from the bank feed and you're closing an expense, and then a month later, your client suddenly finds something in his jeans, you know, like a receipt from a restaurant, and then he sends it to Billbeez, and then we push it to QuickBooks, and then you'll have a duplicate. Now we're trying to avoid that. So today we only allow to push bills, okay? But like you said in the beginning, we still let you have a repository with everything. So I'll show in a second our reports page showing all the receipts and bills ever sent to Billbeez or pulled from QuickBooks. So if you have an audit, if you're doing a monthly report to a client, you can see everything in the reports page very quickly. So you can see it for every month. If you press a month, you can see all the transaction in the specific month. And of course, if you see the bill, it meant it's sent through Billbeez. If it's without the bill, it was pulled from QuickBooks. You can see a breakdown. For example, you want to see auto shop. So again, very quick. You can see it by suppliers. You can see it by accounting category, like we pulled from QuickBooks, which is you did there. And we have something called labels. Labels, it's like tagging. It's something only for the business owner if he wants to categorize his expenses differently than what you categorize in QuickBooks. And of course, it doesn't affect the QuickBooks. So it's a perfect way for your client to see how he wants to see them. For example, if you have a client with projects, so as you can see, they can put a label, project A, and once you put a label to a specific vendor, it remembers it for next time. So every time you get a receipt or a bill from this vendor, it will put the label. And you can see in Billbeez everything also by labels. So for example, here, you can see project and you want to see project C, immediately you can see for the project. So again, it's very easy for the client to manage all these expenses. I want to go to reports page. Reports page is like a repository. It's everything ever sent to Billbeez or pulled from QuickBooks. Now, this is a great tool, both for you as the bookkeeper and accountant and both for your client. I'll show both ways. For example, for a client, they will say, oh, I remember I paid something for Zoom, just starting Zoom, and it finds it quickly. They can see the bill itself, if it was paid, and so on. On the other hand, if it's you as a bookkeeper, for example, and you see in the bank feed this amount, and you want to find it, immediately you find this bill, and again, you can see the document itself. Very easy to do, a quick way to do reconciliation for your client. Now, everything in Billbeez you can export to Excel, Google Sheet or PDF. Now, if you export to Google Sheet or Excel, you can see actually the hyperlink of the document in the Excel, which is a great thing if you send it to your clients and you want them to categorize something, so they can actually see the bill from the Excel, and they don't see something like a transaction in QuickBooks, which they don't remember what it is actually. So this is another workflow that you can work with your clients. I'll show an example. Let's say in the end of the month, you have uncategorized expenses. You can go here, start typing uncategorized, because we also pull all the accounting category. So you can see all the uncategorized. You just mark it, export to Google Sheet, only selected bills, and then you can share it with your clients. And then it's also something for your clients, telling them, listen, I'm working now in the cloud. You know, it's more advanced for you to work with your clients. Now you can share it with them. They can see the document itself. They can put categorize it how it should be, and then you can go into QuickBooks and code it there. Now, I just want to say something about what you said earlier about how we code it automatically in QuickBooks. So once you send it to Billbeez, we go to QuickBooks and see if the vendor is already in QuickBooks and you categorize it all the time the same way. For example, like you said, Office Depot, which is office expenses, so no problem. We will automatically code it the same way. If it's a new vendor, so we'll push it as other Billbeez, and then you can go ahead in QuickBooks and code it there. Now, in the end, this is what we're trying to do. We want that you as a bookkeeper, accountant, work in QuickBooks, and all the other things for a client will be in a different app, which won't affect QuickBooks. I see that I don't have a lot of time, so I just want to jump to the last thing so I can leave room for more questions. So another thing we have is financial review, and I just skipped pay bills, which will take you to the product which I also already showed previously. And latest updates, it's weekly. I forgot to say that earlier, but we send every week an email for the client saying, "Hi, Seth, I know that you didn't have time to go to Billbeez this week because you're very busy, but I want to give you a bullet point of what happened in your business this week." So we show you every bill or receipt that was sent to Billbeez, and we show you which bills still needs to be paid. And if we see something abnormal in the bill or receipt, we will alert you that maybe you should go ahead and see the bill itself, because maybe the amount was changed and you should check that. So last thing I want to show is the financial review, and then I also want to say a quick thing about the pricing. So financial review is a month-to-month comparison showing you very quickly the main differences for the vendors for the period. Now you can also do it for quarter or any other custom range. As you can see, very easily, it shows you the main differences. You can also see it in the breakdown down here for the specific period. And everything in Billbeez, because we pulled the information from QuickBooks, anything in Billbeez, you can also see the revenues. Now you can go ahead and change it for revenues, and think about it, how quickly your clients can see which are their main revenues for the period. I think that this is what the clients want to see, like on what they're having their most expenses and revenues. Like everything here, you can also see by, just go back to expenses. So everything here you can see by suppliers, you can see by accounting category, and you can also see by labels. Which I think, a lot of times we're having another app for that, doing reporting or sending only a PDF from QuickBooks of a P&L or balance sheet, which our clients don't want us to send anymore because they don't understand it. It is frustrating. Here, you can work with them. You can say, hey, go to financial review, or you can share it with them saying, hey, let's go with it together and see the month-to-month comparison or quarter-to-quarter comparison, and showing them the main differences. Last thing I will say about the pricing. So I started saying it in the beginning, because most of us today charge our client flat fee, and most of the products are on us. So we wanted to have a flat fee as a pricing. Okay, so in the beginning of the month, you will know how much the client will cost, and then you know how much you're going to earn on the specific client. So we have a special offer for accountants and bookkeepers. Of course, you get your own free account for your own practice, unlimited ACH transaction, unlimited checks and e-checks. Yeah, I say again, unlimited checks and physical checks. And we have the same day ACH and international transfer for $5 per transaction. Now, if you have one client, it's $39, 2 to 6 clients is $29 per client. And if you have more, you can buy a license for 10 customers. So if you have actually 10 clients with Billbeez, you get each client for $19, which of course is like very affordable to work with your clients. Today, we did something, I want to show you something that we just did as a comparison. If you're working, like we said, with Receipt Bank and Bill.com, and for example, you're using Expensify for expense reimbursement, you're paying between $100 and $200, sometimes more, per month, which with Billbeez, it's only $39, and of course, even less if you're paying for more than one client. I think that's it. Seth, any questions?
Yes, we do. Dominique is asking, how does the revenue tab work? What is the source of the revenues? Is it QuickBooks Online? What is the purpose, a P&L or a preliminary step towards cash flow?
So yeah, for everything. So we pulled the information. Let me just show you again. So the revenues, we pull all the information from QuickBooks. Okay, you can't actually send invoices from Billbeez, but we pull all the information from QuickBooks. And we wanted to show like a very easy, very fast way for your clients to understand what's actually going in his business. It's not a P&L, it's just revenues in this case. Of course, we're working on adding more reports, like some kind of a P&L, which you can make specifically for the client. And as you know, we want our next step is to do a cash flow projection on the business, because we work today on, we want to have all the data sources in one place. So you don't need to connect so many different data sources, and then it's like a mixed information. You don't know, it's less transferable. We want all that data sources in one place, and then we can offer the business or you a great way to make smarter decisions for the business, and of course afterwards also cash flow projection.
All right, Dominique says thanks. That makes sense. Great presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. That was you or Dominic?
That was Dominique.
Okay,
no, I thought it was terrible.
Okay. Thank you.
No, it's look, as I said in the beginning, there's a reason that I've been working with you guys for so long. There's a reason I love what you guys are doing. Josh says Dan is awesome at responding at Billbeez, and Billbeez is a great product. So, and that's another thing. Dan won't say this because he's too humble, but you know, when you guys start working with Billbeez and you need help, Dan will be there. He actually responds to you. He will help you. He'll get you the answers to the questions. If you're stuck on something, if for some reason the sync broke or whatever, all you have to do is reach out to these guys. They get back to you, and they get back to you quickly, and they get it resolved. It's not like a lot of other apps that sort of outsource their support to Zendesk or something, and it takes a full day to get around to an answer on a question. These guys are on it, and that's another thing that I love about this company and their product.
Thank you very much.
You don't use Zendesk, do you?
No, of course not. It's internal support, of course. And by the way, it's very easy. As you can see, we don't need so much support. Usually it's very straightforward. And again, we want to help because we understand the need for good support. So by the way, I didn't show that, but you can see everywhere in the dashboard also. You just took my screen sharing.
Oh, so sorry. Go ahead and take it back.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. I just want to show that you can also do it for revenues. So if you press here, you can see also the breakdown for revenues as we pulled it from QuickBooks. So you can see both revenues and expenses and the breakdown. And you can see it by client.
Brilliant.
You can see, by the way, everything here is clickable, like an interactive. You know, a lot of products show you things, but they don't drill down to the actually transaction. And we wanted to be different, you know, showing you exactly where it came from.
Okay.
Now you can take my screen.
Now you can just give it back to me. I don't have to take it.
Sorry.
I don't have to be forceful.
No problem.
I'm just looking. So in the live Facebook feed, I think we answered all of the questions. Tara's asking about pricing. So Tara, now you have your answer. I just told her that we always save pricing for the end. So yeah, I think we're all good. Obviously, we have a couple more minutes. If anybody else has any questions, thoughts, anybody here using Billbeez that want to share a little experience with it? No?
The thing that I like is, you know, the clients have a dashboard and they're not going into QuickBooks, messing things up and creating more work.
Right, exactly. So clients can, exactly. So what Josh said, because his volume was a little low, is that he likes that the clients have a dashboard they can access without having to let them into QuickBooks, where they can often mess things up, right? Clients can screw up the books. This way you can give them access to the Billbeez dashboard, and that way they can see everything and they can ask questions, but they don't have to be allowed access to QBO.
Yeah, but I hope I could show you, but of course I can't, but if I could show you how your clients actually use Billbeez, the dashboard, the financial dashboard, it's amazing to see that, because as it goes, they get more and more, and it's not like a regular financial app. They actually work with the product, you know, so they go in, they search for bills, they search for receipts, because this is their ongoing operation, you see? And a lot of times they need to call you or send you, like, send me this, or when did I pay to this vendor? That's it. They don't need you anymore for that. They can do it by themselves. And everybody's talking all the time, like be like the advisor for your clients, and not that just do data extraction, or people say don't say you're a bookkeeper, don't say you're just an accountant, like be an advisor. And this is what we actually want to do, like keeping like the ongoing for the clients. They don't need to call you for these things. Then you can just work with them on the report, on how to improve the business, and so on. And it's very easy to use, as you see.
Yep. I love how fast it is too. Like when you first log into Billbeez, it takes a second because it's indexing everything. But then as you saw before, when Dan started typing in the amount of the transaction, before he had the first 3 numerals in there, it had already filtered the list right down to that transaction. It's just so fast when you're looking for something, for getting data. It's bound to be a fraction of the time searching in Billbeez for something that it would be if you were actually just in QuickBooks Online trying to search for transactions. So I love that part of it as well. And I love the fact that, this was, what do you call it? This was actually addressed in, I think, the chat earlier. Dan, you showed how we can easily we can go into that reports area and we can do a search to filter the list down, and we can take that group of transactions and export it into Excel or Google Sheets. And Dan, you mentioned this. I want to make sure this is clear because I think it was Dominique who brought it up. Like if you need to bring up a list of transactions, let's say because you're under audit, and you want to be able to provide the auditor with the documentation, when you do that export, Dan mentioned there's a column in there that's got a hyperlink that when you click on it will take you to, it'll open up a PDF on the web of that document. So you can easily export the list of transactions that the auditor is asking about, dump that into Excel or Google Sheets, share it with the auditor, and they can click on the link and they can verify the documents all day long. And you don't have to give them access to QBO, and you don't have to give them access even to Billbeez. You can just give them exactly what they want, nothing more. And when you're in an audit, that's exactly what you want to do. You want to give them only what they've asked for, nothing more, because as many of you who've experienced this kind of thing know, the more you give them, the more cans of worms you potentially open up. Even if everything's completely on the up and up, it just ends up, if you give them more reasons to inquire about more things, it just eats up more of your time having to go dig around for things and provide it to the auditor. And I know, because I used to be an auditor, and I know how I would look at things, and if I saw something that raised any questions or red flags in my mind, I'd start digging deeper and requesting more information. On the other side, if everything was just very straightforward and here's exactly what I asked for, and I don't have to work hard to figure out what I've gotten and how it ties to what I'm trying to verify as an auditor, then I ask fewer questions because it's psychology. I get the feeling that you're being very forthcoming with me, and based on that, you're not giving me any reason to question whether or not you're hiding anything. And that's what I love about this, is it makes it really easy for you to chisel down to exactly what somebody needs to see and give them a report with the live hyperlink so they can go look at the PDFs themselves. And I don't need to have them log in. So anyway, obviously there's lots of reasons I love Billbeez. Let me quickly read Dominique's comment here and then we'll wrap up for the day. She says, there's such a big difference between apps developed by IT who have limited professional knowledge versus apps developed by professionals with great tech knowledge. In other words, Billbeez was developed by accountants who also obviously so Billbeez is developed by people with both sets of knowledge, the accounting and the tech, and the IT. She says, those who understand the profession build a foundation that can grow to meet the industry needs as it changes and grows over time. They include what is needed and exclude what would pose a problem. So there it is. Obviously, she's preaching to the choir here. But yeah, this is why I love the Billbeez product. And as you all know, I have to fall in love with the product first. Dan wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for the fact that I first fell in love with his product,
Thank you.
And I'll keep saying that. And I'll keep saying that if you haven't already, you have to check out Billbeez. And then Dan, maybe you said this and I missed it because I was answering questions, but if I remember correctly, right now, if people want to try Billbeez, it's free till June.
That's right. Thank you for reminding me. So because of the specific time, and we're working with small business and we are all coming from this industry, so we want to help. So Billbeez is now free until the end of June. So we have a lot of time. And by the way, also the international payments and the same day ACH, which is a great benefit, to use. So until the end of June, anyone that joined Billbeez can use Billbeez for free until, again, for the next 3 months.
All right, perfect. All right, Dan, thank you so much for taking out the time.
Sure, thank you,
all
Seth,
the way from Tel Aviv, Israel.
Also in quarantine.
Right. They just do it in a different language.
Yep.
All right. So look, y'all know how to reach us. Dan is in the Accounting Business Academy Facebook group. So feel free, if you have questions, to tag him. Best thing to do would be to tag him in a comment on this very video that's right there in the group, just to keep things organized and neat in the group itself. So just at Dan, I always feel like I'm going to pronounce your last name wrong. Heilerowitz. Did I do that right?
Yeah,
Close enough?
Close enough.
All right, close enough. You'll find him at Dan in the comment, and he'll come up. You'll see him. And, ask away. Ask any questions you have. Best thing, of course, you can do is actually just try the app. You can do it for free, so there's literally no risk. Just go try it, see how you like it, and then ask questions based on actually playing with it and seeing what you run into. Jennifer's asking to let her know when it becomes available for Canada. I guess Jennifer has clients in Canada, because I know Jennifer is in Mexico, not Canada. Does it work in Mexico? No, not yet.
The financial dashboard is, by the way, the financial dashboard works. We
for
have
anyone,
clients
anywhere.
all around the world. Yeah, we have clients all around the world. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the bill pay that can only be used in the U.S. For actually paying bills. So, and of course, we'll send out some big announcements as soon as it is available for Canada. But as I've mentioned, what you can count on with these guys is when they do roll it out and say it's available in Canada, you're not going to run into bugs. It's because it's been well tested and proven. These guys don't roll out features unless they know it's going to work. And that's one of the other things I love. I'd rather wait a little longer for something and know that when it comes out, it's going to be done right, than have it roll out right away with all kinds of problems that I have to then let them know about so they can fix the bugs. And, we all know a lot of companies do that. They roll things out before they're really ready, and they rely on the customers to tell them what's wrong, and then they go fix that. And these guys don't do it that way. They're very proactive. They make sure it works before they roll it out. And, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It's 9:01 Pacific time, which means we have to go. We all have to go fill out loan applications for clients who want disaster relief and paycheck protection and all kinds of other exciting things that we have to deal with thanks to COVID-19. So I'll see you all on the flip side. I am assuming Gina's doing a hangout. We haven't seen her in a little while, but I'm assuming she's doing her hangout later today at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. So you can find her in the group also and get information from her. Her group on Facebook is SBAA, Small Business Accounting Advisors, and you can join it, and then she can definitely let you know when they're going live with their weekly Friday Zoom or hangout or whatever it is that they do as soon as they do it. I would love to join it, but I never have time. I'm always busy in the afternoons. And that's it, folks. So we'll see you next week with another great session. I will be updating the Nerd calendar today, hopefully, with the rest of the events for the month of April. So just keep checking back on the events page on my website. And of course, I will announce it in the Facebook group once that is officially live. Thanks again, Dan. Really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you. Thank you, Seth. Pleasure.